Oh, good morning, good afternoon, good evening. It's very nice to have you all here with us. I would like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the land wherever you are tuning into this webinar because we are not meeting in person at the moment. And to past and future leaders, thank you. So my name is Joshua Krauthamel, and I work for the Canberra Innovation Network. And it is my absolute pleasure to be the person that gets to storytell. And in that capacity, I have gotten to meet with friends that can help me and help you tell your story in a broader way. So today we are here to talk about the press release, what it means, what you need to include, what you should absolutely never do, where you need to send it, and a bunch more. So first I'd like to introduce you to my panel of friends, and then we'll go through our hard stop things to do and never do, and then have a workshop so that hopefully at the end of this lunch hour or dinner hour or morning hour, wherever you are, you'll be able to have something that you are confident to send out to the press. So I throw to my friend Cam. If you could introduce yourself and let us know why you're here.
Yep, so Cam Sellings, I'm a long-time presenter in Canberra, and then before that, around about 10 years of broadcasting experience as a radio presenter, and before that, 4 or 5 years in television production and corporate video production in Sydney as assistant camera, videotape editor back in the days when we used to video edit with videotape and shoot on tape. And so in the last couple of years, I have been running my own business where I show people how to speak with impact. And I also do media training as well, and I'm a presenter for hire. So I've kept some work on Mix 106.3 and do all sorts of different things in presentation land.
Amazing, Cam. And now to my gorgeous friend, B.
Stop. Hi, I'm Beatrice Smith, but you can call me B. I am a journalist and a content creator. So I work at two places, Her Canberra and Coordinate, which is a media agency. At Her Canberra, I'm the online editor. So I see media releases and I use them to create content. I liaise with the media on all kinds of things that you might be creating a media release for. And I create a lot of content across editorial, social media, websites. At Coordinate, I do the exact same thing, but for clients. So I see both sides. I see the media releases coming in, and I also create them going out as well.
So fabulous. A little background about myself is that I've been on the journo side forever and ever, and on the PR side, not so much. And the first PR job I got was going into an interview and saying, "Your press releases suck. I never published what you sent to me, and it's because XYZ." So I feel like there's something that we can learn from being on both sides of the fence, as it seems like we all are. And so for this first little bit, I would like to talk about the absolute rules, because like rules are meant to be broken, obvi, but there are some that I have, there are some that each of you will have, and I feel like it's so personalized. Like, formerly as a travel writer, when I wrote for SMH, the travel editor had a rule that you could never use the word idyllic, like the idyllic island or whatever. And then when I was a travel editor, I had the rule that you could never use bustling marketplace, because God, like does not every place have a bustling marketplace?
Did you try and play with your editor? Did you try and just sneak one through the word idyllic? Like just try and
Oh,
play games?
100%. Those were the stories that were set in the middle of the night. But so I've got like, I don't know, 5 or 10 bullet points. Tell me what you disagree with. Be topical. If you are not topical, like, why am I, as an editor or journalist, going to sell on your story if it's not on a news cycle that I've already been kind of told that I need to follow? Be one page. I mean, come on, we all know that we have to do that with our resumes. We need to also do that with our press releases. Include quotes. You need to have a quote, at least one, because otherwise your editor is going to push back and be like, is this all just nonsense? Include hyperlinks. This is one that I find that is more me, because I grew up as a digital editor rather than a print editor, but without hyperlinks, I'm not going to know more about your story. So I'm more likely to put it in a bin.
Hyperlinks can also send you off to the single point of truth as well. So, you know, they take you directly to that source. So you can only get so much out in a media release, can't you?
Absolutely.
And if someone gets interest and has interest, they're going to want to know more, and they don't want to have to pick up the phone or write an email. If they just dial straight into that single point of truth, then hyperlinks are 10 out of 10.
1000%. Then send it to a focused list and personalize it. So if my company is putting software into space, then I shouldn't necessarily send it to Guns and Ammo magazine.
You could.
I could, but if I did, I would change the language. Like, I would make it a little bit different than when I was sending it to, you know, higher education publications.
Yep.
Whatever, no judgment. Finally, include a call to action. You need it. And yeah, now I'm gonna toss it over to you guys and find out what are your like hard and fast rules.
Okay, so to state the obvious, working in a media organization, and if you're not familiar with Her Canberra is a lifestyle publication. So we do events, food, the arts, everything going on around Canberra, lots of people profiles, new businesses, anything that Canberrans would find interesting that centralizes their idea of the city and its identity, really. It's a really wide net, which is great because that means that we get a lot of pitches all the time from a lot of various people and organizations. To go through the kind of absolute basics, what you are looking for with a press release when you're sending it to someone like myself, an editor, is you are looking for me to see that and go, oh, amazing. I have a gap in my schedule for tomorrow, and this is going to be the basis of an article that is going to quickly make it into our news cycle. Now, the way that you do that is to essentially make it as easy as possible for a journalist to create that story. And I mean, journalists do a lot of work. They do a lot of work. However, a lot of the time what we're doing is we call top entailing a press release. So what you're doing is you're taking out the message, you're taking out the quotes, as Josh said. It's so important to have quotes in there, especially from, if there is like a media release with 2 people speaking in there, brilliant. That's probably going to make it into an editorial because already the bulk of it is there. You can take what those people have said and you can build an editorial narrative around it. As long as you've got background on the people, the product or event or business that you're talking about, and it's relevant to us, as Josh said, you've got to make sure it's relevant to the publication you're sending it to. We're probably going to make it into a story because you know what? It saves us work. And if it fits our narrative, how great is that we have a piece of content that we can just push out the next day? So a grabbing headline is always good, obviously. At the end of the day, we get a lot of media releases. I have a whole separate folder for them in my inbox. They all go straight into there. I get 10s per day. So it's going to need to grab me. Photos are so amazing. And I always find that there's this poor person who has created a Google Drive link. And when you click into the Google Drive link, they haven't made the public settings shareable and you can't access it. And that's a roadblock right there. That's an extra step that I'm going to have to do as the person. Instead of emailing back going, oh my gosh, thank you so much for this media release. We're going to do a story on it tomorrow. I'll send you the link once it's live. I'm going to have to go to them and say, hey, I'm so sorry. The privacy settings are switched around and that's a bit difficult. And, you know, it might not end up happening because at the end of the day, if I've got a really busy schedule, that's an extra thing that I have to do.
Yeah, and it's not just the not care factor, because you do care, but it's the timing, isn't it?
It's the timing, and if that person doesn't get back to me, then anyway, it's a roadblock.
Yeah.
Dropbox is usually a really safe method. It can get difficult when it comes to embedding photos in either the body of the email, and I think we can probably get back to practicalities later on, but attaching photos can sometimes work, like one photo, sometimes a few photos, send it into the spam folder. So you have to really watch out for that as well. So quotes, photos, a great hook, an obvious media contact or call to action at the end, you know, so contact Josh at CBRIN if you want to find out more about this. Josh's email, Josh's phone number, a couple of phone numbers even. That makes it really easy for the journalist to get in touch with you. That's probably my bare bones basics of media releases.
Yeah, and so then to add on to that, so there's, and we're going to use a couple of old school journo terms right now. So don't bury the headline. Don't put the headline, the one thing that you want people to know, down in paragraph number 4. Don't bury the headline. And then the other old school journalist idea is using an inverted triangle. So don't bury the headline, have that up the top. Then what is the number one most important piece of information or the number one key message? It's got to be in the front line and then in the top line. And then you just go down from there. And so you have that idea of the inverted triangle. So, and then to add on, especially with email inboxes as well. So I still present on Mix 106.3 and I have been now at Canberra FM for 21 years. And so my inbox just gets flooded. And so with the way that my email address works is that I'm Cameron Sullings at canberrafm.com.au. However, I'm Cam. And so that's my on air and just my name everywhere, unless it's my wife or my mum addressing me, it's Cameron, but I'm Cam. And so if there's an email that grabs me and then I open that up and it says, hi, Cameron, I know that that person has not done any research. They've just picked out my name from the email address and it's a blanket email. And so unless it then is really relevant to what I'm doing, it's gone, right? So do your research. And this is where I'm going to talk a little bit about not just media releases, but media release strategy. So you have to, and wherever you are up in as a part of your business plan, if you have a marketing or comms plan, you need to have a media element in there as well. And so you touched on that, Josh, in your opening remarks. You need to know who is in the local media landscape. So especially here in Canberra, we'll just talk about Canberra at the moment, that's where we are. And we're very lucky in the ACT because there's 1 degree of separation. It doesn't matter where you go, someone will know someone. And that is not just in business, that's in life, but that's also in media as well. And so you need to be able to work out which agencies are best suited to your product or your message. So you have your maybe 4 or 5 direct contacts or agencies that you're going to target. And then you'll have a secondary group, and that might be everyone. Guns and Ammo will get the media release. It doesn't matter, but it might not be the targeted one. So what you then have to do, and if you've got a product or a message that you want out at Christmas time, you need to be doing this now. You need to find out and form relationships with the journalists that you want to connect with. How do you do that? Again, in Canberra, pretty easy, 1 degree of separation. You can find out where people are now within 30 seconds of research over here. Be with you. I read that you spend some time at Tilly's and you also do some writing down at the National Museum of Australia on weekends. So if I send you 10 emails and I get no reply, my next stop is I'm going to make a weekend at Tilly's, and I'm not just going to waste my time down there. I'm going to take my work down there, and I'm going to be, I'm going to stalk you, and I'm going to respectfully approach you when I see you. I'm going to introduce myself and I'm going to say, I got a piece of technology that's going to be in space in 6 months and it's being built in a garage in Charnwood. Now, tell me if someone doesn't come to you with that.
That would be a story.
Right?
That would absolutely be a story.
And so there you go. We're engaged with a media contact straight away. And so learn who the media key contacts are, connect with them somehow, and then form those relationships. And then as those relationships are formed, in 6 months' time, when you do have your big story to tell, you're speaking to someone who you already know.
That's so true, Cam. I think that that's exactly the way that you should go about it, is by familiarizing yourself with exactly who you want to connect with, and also making sure that you are, yes, giving yourself a lot of lead time. That's probably one of the things that perhaps grinds my gears a lot. Josh, are we at the like what not to do stage now?
Let's get there.
We can get there. We can get there. Okay. I feel like there'll be a lot of positive and negative peppered in as well. Well, not negative, constructive. Constructive,
well
peppered
done,
in as well.
editor.
I feel like one of the things that is the most difficult for us is always just our capacity. And I think that it does pay, exactly as Cam has done, to do a little bit of research on who you're pitching to. You can be pretty certain if you're pitching to someone like the Canberra Times or the Sydney Morning Herald or your local, say, Fairfax or Murdoch masthead, that they have a large staff. I mean, obviously less so these days, sadly, but they do have a large staff. Same with things like radio stations. They probably have a few sort of like boots on the ground in terms of people who are able to get things together quickly. You're also thinking about the fact that you want to think about the way that people publish as well. You know, whether you're approaching an influencer who posts 3 times a day on Instagram or TikTok or something like that, or whether you're approaching some people like Her Canberra who post about 4 to 5 articles a day, or whether you're approaching someone like the Canberra Times who needs to fill an entire newspaper and website every single day. Those are the kind of dynamics that you need to look for and think about when you're pitching. So say you pitch up to the Canberra Times or Her Canberra, and you're wanting something pretty quick. You know, you're telling, you're talking about a launch that's happening tomorrow or in 24 hours or 48 hours. That is a quick turnaround. We're probably not going to be able to do that unless you supply the content. Canberra Times, on the other hand, they might be looking for an exact story to fit in the next day. The radio station, and correct me if I'm wrong, Cam, this is your backyard, not mine, but they might be looking for something to talk about on a breakfast show the next day. They might want to talk to you about it right now. And you also need to be prepared for that. If you're sending out the media release, you know, you should have some time there to take calls for the rest of the day, or at least make sure that you're really on it. Because if someone wants to call because they want the story ASAP, they're going to want it ASAP and they're going to want your help with that. However, for us, if people are saying, you know, we want that story up tomorrow, we genuinely might not be able to get there. And you can't get frustrated with people if you haven't given them enough lead time, because that's just sometimes how it is. And that's the other thing as well, is that sometimes it's just a no. Hopefully it's a really polite no, but sometimes it's a no. And sometimes, well, all the time, silence is also a no. And so you have to be persistent, as Cam was saying. You really do. You know, you should call the publication, you know, probably not 5 minutes after you send it, probably, you know, a day or so, or send a follow-up, or send 5 follow-ups. But it's just sometimes it might just not be the right fit. Sometimes I've gotten releases and I thought, oh my gosh, if so-and-so was here right now, she would love to write this, but she's on leave for a week. So we're not going to be able to get around to that. Or I might call up and say, hey, I'm so sorry, but we're going to write this in about 3 weeks' time. And sometimes the people aren't actually that keen on that, or they're kind of like, oh, okay, well, that's all right. You know, I mean, you've kind of got to wonder what you're trying to get out of this as well. Is it a relationship? Is it a story? Is it a story in 3 months, as you were saying, Cam?
Yeah, and look, there's a couple of really good things. You know, you definitely need to know, if you're going to Her Canberra, you've got to know the target audience of Her Canberra, which is predominantly female, definitely a male
70-30 split.
Yeah, so there you go. So and so knowing your target audience is really, really important. To add on to a couple of things in this digital age where we're so lucky, and so you, as a person who has the content and knows the story, you can actually do a little content creation yourself. You can record a 30-second audio grab to send to a radio station or to any publication, and so again, you're making it easier for those media agencies to work. So write a little script, record it in. I mean, goodness, I keep on saying in my media training, we're so lucky these days, we have Hollywood in the palm of our hands when we hold up a phone. So not only can we record ourselves to get better, we can also record ourselves to provide the content. So set yourself up, do a 30-second grab to your phone. It's almost broadcast quality. And if it's good enough and it's strong enough, send it off. If it's good and it is engaging, the television station or radio station might then have cause to call you back and say, we love that. We're not going to use the bit that you supply, but we'd love to do a bit with you right now. So that's really important as well. Like, know your audience and then have the ability to provide that content.
That's fantastic, Cam. Couple of things. One, Cam drives a black Hyundai if it's parked outside your house.
Or your local cafe.
Or your local cafe. Watch out.
I'm so used to space.
Two, I wanted to get back to what you said, about silence is not necessarily terrible. Sometimes silence just means like on board, whatever. I have not blocked you, but I'll be thinking about you next time. And I put you in a certain folder in my inbox structure. And when it comes to follow-ups, this is a thing where we all have different preferences. Mm-hmm. So when I was an editor at 9, my voicemail said, "Hi, you've reached Joshua Krauthimmel. I will never answer this phone. And I will never listen to these voicemails. Send me an email at blah-de-blah."
Because that's just the way you prefer to communicate, right?
Because it was the way I preferred to communicate. It was a way that information could be better shared because there were hyperlinks and there were images that I could use. And also there are too many PR people that call you 5 minutes after sending a bloody press release.
Yeah.
This is actually something that I'd like to pick up on as well, Josh, because there is also, you've also got to be very aware of the fact that if you are pitching something, you may be asked to pay for placement. Now, this sounds kind of gross and clickbaity and, but advertorials and advertising, it's a normal part of communication. And realistically, one of the questions that our business development manager or even myself might ask you is there a budget around this? Or what's your marketing budget like around this? And that should be something, if you are selling a product, you're selling tickets to an event, you're selling something for money, you should hopefully have thought about this before you send it out, because there is a chance that if someone does call you back about it, they might say, this is a fantastic fit for our audience. It's not necessarily a story in and of itself. However, we think our audience would be perfect for it. Would you consider doing some kind of, advertising? Or you might call up and say, I wanted to inquire about this. And we would say, oh, thanks so much. Yeah, we did get that media release. It looked really cool, but that would be a sponsored placement because it's about a dinner or it's about an event or something that we would not cover as news. And that's the thing as well. I mean, your news is news. What you're writing your media release about is news. It is something that is worthy of sharing. You might just have to pay to access the audiences that we are the gatekeepers of.
Yeah, and let's also remember that many of the platforms that you're going to be dealing with are commercial entities, right? So and they have shareholders and they have all sorts of corporate structure, and so you're exactly right. So just to follow on as far as timing is concerned as well. So rather than just sending the media release out, and you won't do that now because you've formed your relationship 6 months ago. But if you send a media alert, sometimes that also helps. And if you send a media alert 3 or 4 days ahead of when the media release comes out, and so the media alert might come close to what the headline is, and then 1 or 2 pieces of information, and then say that the media release or more information is going to be coming on Tuesday and the date. Then we can, as journalists and people who work within these agencies, just put it in our folder and it'll come up as a calendar reminder, or we just go to that folder, open it up, and what have we got already for this day? And it'll be sitting in there ready to go. So we know that it's coming. So it's a bit of a heads up, if you like. The other thing to know about, especially in commercial radio, and it's the same with local newspapers and as I understand it, television as well, is that we have to have, by law, a certain degree of local content. So especially if you're in Canberra or the capital region, you've got that on your side. So you will be able to say, and you should make that known very clear, that this is a local product being developed locally, and we're using local people, local products, and whatever is going into it. And you will then be in the the 60% of content that we actually have to broadcast by law.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Amazing. I am conscious of time, and I know that we want to make this a workshop collaborative experience. So if you are watching live and you would like to participate in that, I have a call to action for you, which is to put together a headline and your first graph, your first 2-3 sentences about your product, your innovation, your idea, what it is that you wish that you could see on the front page of fill in the paper or the podcast or whatever it is where you think it would be best to get out. And I would also like you to include where you would like to pitch it. So you have invented the newest sprocket for space.
In the garage at Charnwood.
In the garage at Charnwood. You're a Charney Carney with a sprocket for space.
It's gone.
And
I love this. So sorry to interrupt. I just love these sorts of things because storytelling is massive in what you're doing. Okay, and so this is what I love about Canberra especially. I have a family friends who work in space development, and he's built satellites that are now whizzing around above us. And so he told me the story of the latest satellite that they sent up earlier this year, and they needed a bit from it. And so what does he do? He jumps in the car, he goes down to Bunnings at Tuggeranong, buys the bit, bolts it onto the side of the satellite, and now that thing is in space with a bit of metal from Bunnings towing front. Okay, so that's the story. That you could do a great media release around that.
Exactly, and if their PR person does not hone in on that bit, as opposed to the we develop new technology, blah, 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 blah. You're not going to read that, but you're going to read about Bunnings and Tuggers going to space. Mm-hmm. So I present to you this challenge. Give me a headline, a couple of sentences, and who you would pitch it to. And while you are working on that for the next 5 minutes, we're going to talk about the absolute no-nos of press releases. I'm going to start with B. What just turns you off?
Well, as Cam said before, burying the lead is definitely the wrong thing to do. And this is perhaps something that's quite useful for you, for those of you who are working on pitches, for those of you who are working on the task that Josh just set you. You always want to start with an all-encompassing sentence at the start, something that says the who, what, when, where, and why. And I think that, so if it doesn't have that straight away, that's a bit difficult. Something that, this is a really good one. So sometimes formatting can just go completely squiffy on absolutely whatever email. Britt in the back is laughing because she knows exactly what this is. It can just go so squiffy and it can look so strange. And I'm not saying that I don't look at strange text. I'm not that much of a princess, but it's just one extra thing that you don't need. If you've gone to the trouble of, putting it all in Comic Sans or something like that.
I was just going to say, send in your resume in Comic Sans. You're not going to get.
Personally, I would love that. I would love so hard.
Hired.
I would love that.
Send
your resumes to me in Comic Sans, please. And your press releases. If you, one thing to do is just to, and this is something you should do in advance anyway, is to sit down, write it all out, and then send it out to a couple of friends who perhaps maybe use Gmail and then one that uses Outlook, because it is going to be so valuable to you if you know that when your email goes out, it just looks so ridiculous at the other end, or that it never arrives because it gets blocked by a spam or junk filter. That is so important. Right there is like you whacking away your own stumbling blocks, and you can go back, rework the process, make sure that everything's perfect. Another thing to do, sorry, I realize I'm talking about things right now, but another thing to do is to put the one pager in the body of the email, because some people just don't open attachments, and then also attach it. And this is a really hot tip, This is a no-no.
Okay.
Do not attach it just as a PDF, because you know what that does to me as a journo? Means I can't copy and paste it. I'm not sitting there typing out people's quotes with my weird two-fingered typing
on a deadline
to put into another story. And I have gone back to that many PR agencies and asked them for a Word document. So if you attach it, I really recommend you attaching it as a Word document. I know it doesn't look as professional as a PDF, and feel free to attach it as a PDF.
Well, just do both, yeah.
Do both, but what that means is that I can immediately strip that text, clear it of formatting, whack it into the back end of our website, and start working on a story. You have no idea how many stories we've turned around, really fun, exciting stories in not 5 minutes, but the 5 minutes, the journalism 5 minutes, because it's been easy to be able to pop into the back end of our website. No PDFs, or at least PDFs and Word documents. That's probably actually my number one thing.
And this is not journalists being lazy, it's journalists being laid off. And there's a smaller
less doing more
amount of people in the newsroom, and they kind of need to make their job easier.
That's it. Yeah. I would love nothing more than to spend my entire day writing awesome stories about fascinating people and things that are going on in Canberra, but it's just, that's not going to happen. I've got to do 20 things in my day to make sure that we've got enough content for tomorrow. That's my number one job, is to make sure we've got content for tomorrow.
Yeah.
Keep the lights on. But if you send your story to me in a Word document, it's that much closer to me writing a free story on your product, event, organization.
Cam, how about radio?
Well, again, there's not too much different to sending a media release to a publication as there is to a radio station. I'd definitely avoid aggressively pursuing. So you mentioned don't call 5 minutes afterwards, and that is a PR company trying to sell a story rather than a piece of news content being ready to go. So don't aggressively follow up. Again, if you've already got your relationships in place, you won't have to aggressively follow up. It might be one follow-up phone call in the afternoon if you're sending in the morning, or the next day. So definitely don't do that. And just in addition to the formatting and whatnot, come up with your own style as well. So have your styling so it's the same and consistent the whole way along. So that's not a don't do that, but that's a add to the idea of formatting properly. Come up with your style and use that consistently.
This is a personal question, I'm not going to ask you about your favorite restaurant, but when approaching radio, where there are different presenters with different personalities throughout the course of the day, do you suggest going after a presenter, a time slot, a station?
Yep.
Like what's the breakdown?
So again, in your research, you will know that the AM stations, so Double C, 2CC, and the ABC have a much more talk format. So that's going to be an interview where possibly on the ABC, you might get 6 to 8 minutes. That's generally speaking, a good interview slot. Maybe a little bit less on 2CC. With the music stations, you have to understand that everything is a lot shorter. Breakfast in all radio stations is the key part of the day. So it might be 5 a.m. or 6 a.m. start in the morning on air through until 9 a.m., sometimes 10 a.m., just depending on what it is. But breakfast is the biggest audience of the day. From there, we jump to drive in the afternoon. So drive is the drive home, if you like, and that can be from around about 3 o'clock through to 6 or 7. So that's the next biggest part of the audience. And then you also have to understand that with radio stations like Hit 104.7, breakfast is live, and then the rest of the radio station is networked across the day. So, I believe they might do mornings up until midday, but from midday is networked. So it doesn't matter how good you are at penetrating into presenters. There's no one there. It's coming from Sydney and Melbourne, you know, tragically. And so you have to understand that those programs are not going to be, there might be a tiny little bit of local content in the news, but there's going to be very little opportunity there. So again, just like with the online and digital publications, you've got to know the format, and you've got to know who you're going to be approaching and which are the best parts of the day. And so those are the best parts of the day.
So how would I finesse my idea differently for Lish Fair and Michael Black at ABC Canberra from 5:30 in the morning versus like Kyle and Jackie O nationwide in whenever they are on that?
Yeah, okay, so and so this is what you know, Lish and the ABC team could very well get back to you, and they might engage with you. Again, if you're just approaching them cold, that's going to be a little bit, but if you've got those relationships going, there's a possibility there. There is no way that anyone from the Kyle and Jackie O show is going to get back to you unless 0.0001% of a chance that they see something in what you have. I've worked with Kyle on air when I was in Darwin, and Kyle runs his own show. And so, I mean, I love it or hate it, and I did enjoy working with him. And I think, you know, even though for his programming it's not to the taste of a lot of people, it also is to the taste of a lot of people.
Sure.
And so he has a big audience. And Jackie O worked here in Canberra. She was the receptionist at Canberra FM at 104.7 1,000 years ago. Okay, and so you, in all probability, you're not going to get airtime on Kyle and Jackie O. But with some probability and with a bit of, you know, strategic thought and practice, you may well get yourself onto ABC Breakfast.
And Lish is going to get you into the cars of Canberra.
Yeah, 100%. And so I have to say that, obviously, I know Lish and I've presented with Lish, but I have
also, this is not an advertorial.
Yeah.
I'm just talking.
Or am I speaking on behalf of the ABC as well? I can definitely speak on behalf of Canberra FM because I'm still an employee there. It's just my general knowledge of the way that it works.
Sure. And B, like, did you ever get was it a subject headline that came from someone that you had never heard from before, but it just clipped you and you were like, I am gonna go down this rabbit hole and find out more?
Yeah, all the time.
So
Literally every
what
day.
was it about that?
Oh God, I can't even remember the last one because there's like literally one a day. So we have we're really lucky to have just hired a new journalist, which is fantastic.
Woo!
So we have we have a junior journalist with us now who is just phenomenal. And so we are able to be giving her stories and feeding her stories. And so we are really like looking out to people who are sending us stories to be able to do that. And I don't know, I think we got a press release maybe 3 days ago from, I won't give too much away because we're publishing it soon. And also I don't
Hang on, my listening ears are on.
Yeah, exactly. And I don't know exactly how Erin's going about it, but it's from a young Canberran who is just incredibly accomplished. And she actually saw something that we published on the website and went, oh, actually, I think my story is probably quite, you know, in step with what Her Canberra is publishing at the moment because it's similar to what they've just published. I'll get in touch with them and I'll let them know what I'm up to. And we just thought, oh my gosh, what a fantastic story. We'll absolutely assign that to a writer and run that. And I think that did come with a media release, actually.
Yeah.
So with this new journo that you've hired, what do you tell her about what to look for, what to sift out, what is rubbish, what is top of the pile, especially when you're new to the business? Like, what makes a story?
I think that she's got a great nose for a story, so she's really able to see what Canberrans are going to connect with. But I think for us, it's about people and stories is really the heart of Her Canberra. Things people are going to care about. We have sort of kindness and care quite central to what we want to do. We're not very, we're clickbaity with stuff because we want people to click on it. You know, I don't think that's necessarily so much of a negative term anymore, but we definitely have a lot of heart. And so that's what we really approach things with, you know, people.
Well, that's why we go back to your website time and again, because there's feeling, there's empathy, there's a locality.
And I think that really what we're looking for is stories that connect Canberrans with their city and with other Canberrans and spread that's it,
Yeah.
spread the good news. So really for us, I mean, that's probably, as you just said, Cam, that's probably all you need to know. If it's Canberra centric, that's what we want to hear. I mean, you know, part of the reason why I hate getting calls on my personal mobile from media agencies is because they're often pitching things that are just so wildly inappropriate for our audience. Or my absolute bugbear is their massive nationwide brands who have sent out a blanket press release and they're calling to ask if we want to promote some, you know, insert massive global brand, here's new something or other. And I'm just like
the new
we would
Nike
never do
shoes
that.
or
It's almost offensive that they haven't done their research.
Well, what's offensive is when you ask them, oh, well, yeah, we could do that because we could find the local, you know, because they've, you know, so-and-so has a store in Canberra. We can promote this to our audiences. And they go, oh no, we don't have a budget for that.
Yeah.
And it's like, you are insert massive global brand name here. I think that you actually probably do have a marketing budget, but like, don't worry about it. Like, that's fine. No worries. But thank you for just totally hitting in the wrong direction. I was going to say something before, but now I forgot. Yes, that's probably, hyperlocal. That's probably the best thing.
Amazing. I will ask Britt, did we have any folks that have sent through their ideas?
We do.
Come on over and join us.
Two questions.
Welcome. Come on over, Britt.
Questions.
Come in.
I'm going to create a big type of feedback.
Say welcome to Britt.
So question one,
Okay.
can you burn bridges if you pester a news agency too much?
So the answer is yes, absolutely. So you just can, but this goes to my strategy and my thought process of developing those relationships months ahead. If you hit up a media agency or an online platform and you just come in at 1,000,000 miles an hour, people are just going to go, whoa, you know, the warning signs go up, right? This is the alarm bells ring.
Develop the relationship.
It's got to be a slow drip, and that's what I'm saying. You need to be thinking about, you know, 3, 4, 5, 6 months ahead. Finding the people who you think are relevant and the platforms or the media that you think is relevant to your product because they have the audience that you want to speak to and communicate with, and then start those relationships, and you'll get much more traction going backwards and forwards like that. And your end goal is to have your messages communicated via other platforms. That will work. Do not come in at 1,000,000 miles an hour, because I know I've seen it happen. You just go, no, that's too much.
And also, we understand that you, as an entrepreneur, have come up with a new idea. That is your focus. You don't know about the media landscape, so it might take some time that, like, you've developed the sprocket or the new kind of underwear or whatever, and like you need to get to know who are the sprocket journalists and the underwear journalists.
Hopefully everyone.
And, and develop a relationship as you are developing your product.
Correct.
They should be two parallel paths, product and media relationship.
Yes, definitely.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more with both of you. I think that's the issue. I think, yes, you can burn bridges, and unfortunately that it absolutely can land you in a bit of hot water, especially if you are aggressive. The issue is that it's not, as I said, your news is your news. It's still news, but unfortunately it may not land. It may not just come at a good time capacity wise. It might just be that you send it at 4 p.m. and by the time I got it the next day, I've got this many emails. And if you call me and I say, sorry, I haven't seen that yet, you know, don't say, oh, why, I sent it yesterday or something like that. It's really difficult. It makes it really difficult. And unfortunately it does leave a bad taste in our mouths. If you are really serious about getting your story out there and your media releases or your media strategy isn't landing, I know that it probably is outside of some people's budgets, but a lot of places, and I'm thinking of Canberra, but everywhere has this now, have a wonderful landscape of really small boutique PR and media agencies who can take you on.
Yeah.
And I've seen magic happen with these kind of connections. And I know that we're talking to people about how they can do their own PR. And I think it is absolutely doable. It is absolutely doable, but you've got to understand that at the end of the day, you actually can pay to access other people's contacts, because I have PR and media agencies that I pick up, that can pick up like I will answer their calls any time of the day, because I know that whatever I trust them. And if they can talk to me for hours about their clients, and I will listen, no matter who their clients are. Maybe their clients aren't even relevant to her Canberra, but I'll still listen until they're done. And that's the access that you could sometimes get as well. And so that's definitely something to think about as well, especially if, you know, even just the thought of doing this all for yourself freaks you out. It shouldn't, because it is really accessible to be able to do this.
And
but
it's
if it
cool
does,
when it works, right?
that's it, and it
Yeah,
works. It absolutely does. But you should understand that, you know, if you're not getting anywhere after about 6 months to a year, maybe it's time to bring in some professionals.
And so some really cool takeaways, and there's lots of cool takeaways already in the first sort of 45 minutes, however long we've been going for. But we have used words like trust and relationship well ahead of headlines and content and all that. Okay, so build those relationships, and that's a very, very good piece of advice to go to these little boutique style agencies, and usually they're ex-journalists themselves, and they already know the Canberra media landscape, and they will be able to absolutely point you in the right direction. And yes, there might be a cost to it now, but done correctly, it will come back tenfold, maybe more.
Absolutely.
I also spammed these two with my articles about my underwear line and didn't get anywhere until I hired a local PR agency.
I was going to say, that's because you had a photo with you out them on.
No one wants to see that. So do we have another question?
We do.
Brett?
So we have another question that actually leads us quite nicely into the PR examples that we'll do. So the question is, if you are reading an email request to publish a story, what are some of the things in the first few sentences that grab you and make you want to read on?
Okay, so as I said, it needs to be the number one key message. And if you've got a really good story to tell, or you've got something very, very cool that you think is happening, and you've gone into the relevant agencies or platforms, and your first and second line in that media release underneath your headline, which you haven't buried 4 paragraphs down, needs to be either your key message or the thing that the point of difference. It's got to be in that 1 or 2 first lines. And so if then it's relevant and, you know, all the other ducks line up, then you've got us.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And the other thing is, and this is kind of what I've spoken to before, I think this is the thing that I forgot to say earlier, but something that's really important is that if you think about it, a lot of the time, for example, for her Canberra, we are really interested in first person narratives. You'll see that if you go to our website. It's a lot of, you know, there's a lot of interview style articles, but there's also a lot of first person narratives. And that's something that you can really do for yourself. If you're like, as in, you can make that a bonus for us. If you say, oh, by the way, I see you publish a lot of, you know, first person stories with people talking about their own endeavors or inventions or whatever, you know, is that something you'd be interested in? That's actually really what I'm looking for, is some kind of, I guess, cooperation or offering on your end. If it's like a, you know, would you be interested in publishing a story about this? The answer is either going to be yes or no. If it's, you know, I'd love to offer you the kind of story that you'd like, you know, would that be an interview? Would that be something that's written by a third party? Would that be something, and that's actually something, you know, you should think about as well. You know, maybe you could even, if you've got some sort of like writing nous, maybe you want to write your own story. And that's essentially just like creating a media release, popping in some quotes, but writing the actual story yourself. You can hire professionals to do this, but a lot of people can do it themselves. And you get to make it the story that you want. And then if you sent that to people along with the media release, like, oh, I've attached a short, you know, 400-word article here. If you wanted to publish it, you know, under a generic byline, you know, you can feel free to do that. Here are some images. You know, that could make it in the next day, depending on the quality.
And that's what we call content marketing.
Yeah. And so storytelling is just so massive in business and government at the moment. And, you know, humans are wired for stories, right? It's the way that we have transferred information and communicated over millennia. I've done a lot of research into the science of storytelling and what goes on inside your brain when good stories are told. And so a great example this morning, so I filled in on Mix 106.3. Nige was unwell. Last night, of course, it was announced that Brisbane would be hosting the 2032 Olympic Games. So the photo that we ran with, not just through a 20-minute window, but right across the course of the 3 hours, and we brought it in and out of the show, we asked for Canberrans, so local people who had worked or taken part, competed or volunteered in any Olympics anytime over the last 30, 40, 50 years. And so we had these wonderful, wonderful stories of people calling up of where they volunteered in Sydney, or when they performed in Atlanta, or whether they were here in Canberra when the football was being played in the year 2000 and the role that they played. So storytelling is massive. Learn how to tell good stories, and as an attachment next to your media release that already has the bones of a story anyway, really add that extra bit. Or, as we said before, tell your story on a video. Put your phone up and tell it to the lens, or give us 45 seconds a minute as an audio MP3 file. Tell your stories, because I'm sure for everyone who is viewing in on this or tuning in on this, we're entrepreneurs. And I like to say, when I talk to people about CBRIN upstairs on the 5th level of the ACT Health building, I call it Funky Town, right? Because you come up here and there are some amazing people developing amazing ideas and taking them through, and the team here does a wonderful job at bringing them from idea into fruition, into sellable products and businesses. And so there's lots of cool stuff going on up here. So there's lots of very good stories to be told. You've got a good story to be told. Learn how to tell it. Put in a 6-month media strategy and you will start to get exposure. Can it be that simple?
Oh my gosh, it's so
absolutely
easy. My underwear company.
Oh, no more.
Just 6-month strategy, Josh, we'll get there.
Yeah.
So in terms of putting together a 12-month strategy, what are the goalposts? What are the things that I need to hit in order to get the public knowledge and also the awareness and have the links back to get more investment? Like, I've launched my new sprocket, not underwear, sprocket.
Sprocket underwear.
But I'm looking at 12 months. What are my goalposts, especially when I'm talking to media?
I think a developed website, something that looks, fresh and shiny and lovely. It doesn't have to be anything crazy, just a nice landing page, some images, an about you section. That's all you need really for launch. Use WordPress, use Squarespace, Wix, all look very sleek. Yeah, absolutely. And then social media channels as well, I'd say, really important.
So would you not respond to a release if it's a company and it has 200 followers?
No, but I would find it really difficult if it was especially a product and it did not have good photos. Professional photography. I know that sometimes that cost is out of the realm of possibility, but with iPhones or smartphones,
everyone has a friend.
Everyone everyone has a friend, or you might be able to connect up with a network that would be able to provide you with those. But that really should be a jumping off point for everyone, and I'm sure this is something you guys talk about CBRIN all the time with new things. Sometimes a photo is, or a suite of photos is all it takes. If there's an event that's happening around Canberra and they've got some really killer photos along with a great hook, like, we know that story is just going to really delight our audiences, and so sometimes that's a make or break.
Yeah, and so I'm a sole operator as well. I run my own business, camsellings.com.au.
Hey!
So what I do is I'm very careful, and this is probably more going on to marketing than media, but I'm just going to say it. So what you should be doing, here am I saying what you should do, what you need to do.
Tell us, Dad.
Okay, so website is number one and most important as your single source of truth. Okay, you need to make that shiny, you need to make that beautiful, accessible, functionable, all the things that they talk about good websites you need to do. And then your other platforms satellite that. What a lot of people do though is they make the mistake of having too many platforms. They think they need to have Insta, TikTok, Facebook, like there's hundreds, right? So don't do that. Don't spread yourself 10 miles wide and only an inch deep. Have your website and then have definitely 1 and 2, maybe 3, but do those 2 really well. So for me, website, LinkedIn, because my target audience is predominantly people in business, and then I have a strong Facebook page as well. And so, and I use Facebook, all my content goes in there, and I use it also as an SES weapon as well to try and get people into my website. So don't spread yourself too wide.
True, but also hyperlink all the time.
Yeah, totally.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
We are coming to our last couple of minutes, but I would love if we could highlight like top bold lines, like these are B's absolute, and bringing it back to a media release, like B's media release top 3s,
Top 3 tips.
Cam's media release top 3s.
So my top 3 tips would be always make a grabby headline. Definitely include photos in some sort of excellently accessible way. Make sure you let people into your Google Drives or your Dropboxes. Make sure that how you follow that up in a human way, whether that's a phone call or dropping into a local cafe
Yes.
or whatever, is done with a lot of kindness.
Yeah.
I think that's probably the most important thing.
Okay, and so for me, what I'll say, and I'm big on this, is the media strategy. Map out your journey on what it's going to be. Don't just expect people to pick up, or agencies to pick up on what you're communicating or pushing out straight away. Have that strategy. Number 2, and I'll echo B's words, says don't bury the headline. Get that up and be creative with it. Create that knowledge gap so that people who open these headlines want to go, oh, I need to know more about that. You have to create that knowledge gap. And number 3, if you can send out an alert before your actual date of media release, just to get it into the calendars of the agencies that you're approaching, that will help.
Amazing. And
what are your top 3 tips, Josh? You want to tell us?
Yeah.
I would say that you need to have a downloadable image with quotes that I can use and someone that I can call, even though I don't want to ever pick up the telephone.
Right.
I would also say that it needs to be topical, and it depends upon who you are approaching. So we know that Canberra Times goes to print on Wednesday mornings. So I'm not going to be upset if I send them a release on a Wednesday afternoon and I'm not going to hear anything back for a while. I'm not going to be calling all of the time. You need to know people's press cycles and you need to know what they're interested in. And that goes to the final thing, which is to knowing who you are pitching to.
Definitely.
So I know that Cam is Cam and not Cameron, and that's going to get me so much further in his emails, not just the underwear pics, but also just addressing him as an actual person who has looked at his LinkedIn, looked at his Twitter, followed his most recent posts, and has an understanding as to what he reports, how he reports it, and who he reports it to, which is, the most important. And I will now say that
Do you want to do feedback on the 2 headlines we got just quickly?
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
I know that we've changed the time a couple of times from 10:30 to now we're at noon. It was going to go to 1:30, but we have to shut at 1 for timing things. But we do have a quick headline thingo.
So the first headline, Medvatic launches free trial of digital healthcare services.
Cool. Yeah, I think that it says everything in the headline there. I mean, I think that probably depends. I assume that it would not be going to me by virtue of it not saying in Canberra. So that's probably a little bit of feedback there. If they were pitching to me, I'm not sure, Medvac, whether that is, whether they're pitching to me with that. But hot tip, if it says in Canberra, that is, I will immediately focus in on that. I assume that that's a national media release though.
Yes, so let's go next one because I've got an example here as well.
Next one is building a supportive sisterhood in Canberra's workplaces.
Oh yeah, I love that.
Yeah.
That's right up these.
Send me that, please.
And so if you are directing in at per Canberra, that's using those sorts of words, the sisterhood, and it's got the word Canberra or the name Canberra in it. So there's a few boxes that are ticked there. But those might be a little bit lengthy for mine though.
Oh, see, that's actually something that I should say. I love a long headline.
Okay.
Love a long headline. I got one the other day that could have been like 2 sentences.
Yeah.
It was great. It told me
Yeah.
everything I needed to know. But again, that's a
Yep,
personal
yep.
preference.
Okay, so I've got a really good example here from a book called Made to Stick, and I'm not sure if we're allowed to be promoted, but if you want to learn how to make your messages stick, you absolutely need to either read that book or there's an audible version of it as well, Made to
We'll
Stick.
include a link to it in the YouTube and article.
There's a part of that book and where they talk about exactly this and talk about headlines. So, so there was a journalist teacher who was giving a lecture and said to the students, okay, here's the story. So the teacher had students write a headline. The teacher gave them all the key facts, and it reads on: Ken Peters, principal of Beverly Hills High School, announced that the entire faculty will travel to Sacramento next Thursday for a colloquium in new teaching methods. Among speakers will be anthropologist Michael Reed, and on it goes. So the teacher gave the students a whole bunch of information just like that, all the key facts and everything like that. And then the task was to go away and do exactly what you've talked about there, write a headline. So of course, most of the students came back by regurgitating the facts that were in the body that was given out, okay?
Beverly Hills faculty
going to Sacramento, blah, 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 right? So delete. The headline to that story is, there will be no school on Thursday.
Yes.
Right? Now, so immediately you create that knowledge gap. Now, no school on Thursday to teachers and then the students. Of course, we want to know why there's not going to be any school on Thursday. Click, open, start reading. All right. So there will be no school on Thursday. In that book, there's that example, a whole bunch of other really good ones as well. But that goes to exactly what we're talking about.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Amazing.
Oh.
Fantastic. Well, I can't thank you enough, friends. Cam and B.
No,
We hope
Thank
to have
you.
you back,
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
also to the wonderful friends here.
Britt,
Yay.
Thank you.
she's behind the scenes making it all work. But no, I mean, we can sit down here and this could go on for hours, right? Because I mean, we're sort of all live in this world, and it's great to be able to sit down and talk. And then hopefully for you who are tuned in, there's been some good takeaways for you. You've made some notes as we've gone along, and then off you go, and good luck in your journey.
Fantastic. So again, thank you to my journalist friends. Thank you to Britt Nichols. And also thank you to you for tuning in. I encourage you to put together a rough draft press release, send it my way. We can get some feedback and send it back to you because, you know, your greatest idea is just you shouting into space until you've got some column inches, as it were. So thanks again, and talk to you later.